If you were to look at the world's emotional balance sheet, honestly, it would be pretty terrifying.
Absolutely. It would be a very grim read.
Right. I mean, we are so used to tracking global health through economics, like GDP, trade deficits, inflation rates, supply chain metrics, all that stuff.
All the hard numbers.
Exactly. But if you try to actually quantify human despair, you would see a ledger with a massive catastrophic deficit. It really makes you wonder what it would take to balance an account that is just so heavily weighted in pain.
Yeah, and that requires a completely different kind of accounting. We
Mhm.
spend so much time optimizing our financial ledgers, but when it comes to the sheer volume of global suffering, I mean, the numbers are almost paralyzing.
They really are.
And that is exactly the problem set we are diving into today.
Yes, it is. Because today we are dissecting a fascinating essay from 2021 written by Swiffing. It's titled The Magical Power of Faith and Hope.
A very bold title.
It is. And the core mission of this deep dive is to examine the premise that global suffering, this massive red ink on the human balance sheet, can be cured through a highly specific application of collective belief.
And the scale of the problem presented here is just unvarnished. The essay pulls directly from a 2019 World Health Organization report to establish a baseline of despair.
Right, to really set the stakes.
Exactly. So on average, 800,000 people commit suicide globally every single year.
Wow.
And then statistical analysis shows that the number of suicide attempts is actually 20 times that of completed suicides.
Okay, let's unpack this, because taking those numbers at face value is chilling enough. But the mathematical approach the author takes to this suffering broadens the context immensely.
It really does. It balloons very quickly.
Right. Because if you factor in an estimated 4 severely affected individuals per suicide or attempted suicide, I mean, we're talking parents, children, spouses, friends who are left with that profound trauma.
The collateral damage, essentially.
Yeah, the emotional blast radius. You are suddenly looking at 64 million people worldwide thrust into extreme acute agony annually, just from this one single cause.
And zooming out even further, when you aggregate the suffering caused by other systemic human crises, chronic diseases, regional conflicts, extreme poverty, wars, and natural disasters, the conservative estimate presented is that 2 to 3 billion people are living in severe pain every single year.
2 to 3 billion.
Yeah, that is roughly a third of the global population walking around carrying a profound, debilitating burden of despair.
It's treating global suffering not just as a philosophical abstraction, but as a tangible, quantifiable crisis.
Exactly.
And we are looking at a blueprint for an ideology today based on those numbers. And I want to be super clear about our lens right up front. We are examining this not as an endorsement of the specific commune or lifestyle being proposed later in the text, but really as a masterclass in how extreme belief structures are built.
Right. We're just looking at the mechanics of the argument itself.
Yeah. Exactly. We want to understand how someone takes the raw data of global misery and engineers an ideological cure.
And understanding that architecture is key. The foundational block of this entire worldview is the assertion that faith and hope are not just poetic concepts.
Not just nice feelings to have.
Right. They are framed as literal, miraculous mechanical powers. The premise is that suicide and systemic despair are the direct result of a society losing these two specific elements.
It's a structural failure.
Precisely. Therefore, injecting faith and hope back into the human equation is positioned as the only true path to liberation.
And to build this case, the focus shifts from these massive, almost incomprehensible global statistics down to the visceral, micro-level reality of what hope actually looks like in life or death situations.
Yeah, the extreme acute crises.
Right. Like, think about an earthquake hitting Los Angeles. Buildings collapse. In the specific scenario the author brings up, you have 14 children buried deep in the rubble of a school.
They are trapped in pitch darkness, completely cut off from the outside world for 36 hours.
Which is terrifying. You would naturally assume the primary factors dictating their survival would be pure physics and biology. Right.
Like, did they have an air pocket? Did they avoid crush injuries?
Exactly, or did they have access to a ruptured water pipe or something? But the analysis zeroes in on a completely different core variable. It focuses entirely on the psychological anchor of just one of those 14 children.
Yeah, because before the disaster, this boy's father had made him a promise. He told him, no matter what happens, I will be with you.
Such a simple promise.
But in the suffocating darkness of that rubble, while panic would typically consume anyone's mind, The son held on to an absolute unwavering belief that his father was coming.
So the survival here is framed not as a physical endurance test, but as a psychological triumph.
Exactly.
And the incredible part is that this psychological triumph wasn't isolated, that one boy's absolute certainty literally infected the other 13 children.
It's a really fascinating shift in group dynamics.
Yeah, I mean, we always talk about panic being contagious. Someone screams in a crowded theater and suddenly everyone is running. But here, hope acted as a contagion.
It spread through the group.
Right. It acted as a mental shield against overwhelming fear until they were all pulled out alive.
It completely overrides the natural human instinct to despair. And the author gives an even more extreme example of this acute survival mechanism: the San Jose copper mine collapse in northern Chile.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah, back in August 2010, 33 miners were trapped 700 meters underground.
That is nearly half a mile straight down into the earth.
It's unimaginable.
And up on the surface, for over 2 weeks, nobody even knew if they were alive or dead.
And the conditions in their underground refuge shelter were just grim. They only had enough emergency food to last maybe 2 or 3 days under normal circumstances.
2 or 3 days of food for 33 guys.
Yeah, yet they survived in total isolation until they were discovered on the 17th day. And the full rescue took 69 days.
This detail just stalks you in your tracks, though. They survived those initial 17 days by rationing and consuming just 2 spoonfuls of canned fish per day per person.
2 spoonfuls. It's barely anything.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because we so often think of survival purely as a matter of biology. It is a strict calculation of calories burned versus calories consumed.
Right, the metabolic math.
Exactly. So I have to push back a little on the premise here. Is the argument that hope is literally acting as a calorie substitute? Because biology is biology. You can't just believe your way out of starvation.
What's fascinating here is that the ideology isn't necessarily rewriting human biology. It is elevating psychology to the level of physiology.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, think about what happens to a human body in a state of sheer panic. Your heart rate skyrockets, cortisol floods your system, your breathing becomes shallow and rapid.
You are burning a ton of energy.
Right, you are burning massive amounts of precious metabolic resources just dealing with the terror.
You are bankrupting your physical ledger just by panicking.
Precisely. So by introducing absolute faith, the unshakable hope that rescue is inevitable, the mind prevents the physical system from hitting that panic overdrive.
Oh, I see.
It slows the heart rate, conserves energy, and sustains the biological will to live when the strict math of 2 spoonfuls of fish says you should be dead.
So faith and hope are presented as the literal mechanisms that transform a lethal environment into a survivable one.
Exactly. They act as a biological buffer.
So we can see how hope functions as a vital resource in an acute crisis. An earthquake or a mine collapse triggers a massive adrenaline dump, and it is a desperate fight for immediate survival.
But adrenaline eventually runs out.
Right. What happens when the struggle isn't sudden, but chronic? The author's focus then transitions to a contemporary case study to prove that this psychological shield holds up over a decade of constant failure.
And this is where we look at the Chanyuan Celestials of an organization called Lifechanyuan.
Right.
This is a group of more than 100 ordinary people who, starting in 2009, decided to live together in what is described as a specific communist model.
Okay, let's define what we mean by a communist model in this context, because that word carries a lot of historical baggage for people.
Oh, absolutely.
They aren't talking about a geopolitical nation state. They are describing an intentional community, like a commune where private property is abolished, resources are pooled entirely, and individuals essentially erase their personal financial ledgers to contribute to a single communal account.
Yeah, it's a fully shared existence.
Right. And the term Chanyuan Celestials is equally important. These are people who view themselves as having transcended ordinary worldly concerns, striving for a more heavenly, spiritually aligned state of communal living.
But transcending worldly concerns doesn't make you immune to worldly problems.
No, it does not.
The timeline of their hardships over an 11-year period is grueling. They start by building 3 idyllic communal spaces in Yunnan province. They pool their resources, build homes, cultivate the land.
And then they lose it all. Due to friction with local authorities, they are completely driven out of their homes. And in the process, more than 20 million yuan in property is confiscated or goes to waste.
That is a massive financial and emotional deficit.
Huge. But they don't disband. They move to Nanjing and build a new home.
And they are evicted again.
Right. So they travel across the country to Xinjiang, which is an entirely different geographic and cultural region, and create 3 new homes there.
Evicted again.
Unbelievable.
So they journey all the way back to Yunnan, where the entire experiment started, and somehow manage to build 3 more homes.
Only to face hardship once more and be forced out yet again. The cycle is just staggering.
It really is.
At this point, the group completely exhausted all of its pooled funds. They were functionally bankrupt and felt there was literally no place for them in the entire world.
Which raises an important question, and it's central to understanding extreme ideological resilience. How does a group of over 100 people sustain themselves when their bank accounts are empty, the homes they built by hand are repeatedly lost, and they face constant rejection from society?
It's wild. Reading through that relentless cycle of eviction, you immediately think of the myth of Sisyphus.
Oh yeah, the boulder.
Yeah, the man cursed by the gods to push a massive boulder up a mountain, only to watch it roll all the way back down the moment he reaches the top. He does this over and over for eternity. It is the ultimate symbol of exhausting, futile labor.
A very fitting analogy for losing your community and your life savings repeatedly.
But there is a crucial difference here that Sisyphus didn't have. Sisyphus was cursed. He had no choice but to push the rock. The Chanyuan Celestials are voluntarily choosing to walk back down the mountain, put their hands on the rock, and start pushing again.
They are opting into the struggle.
Yes. Logic dictates that after losing 20 million yuan and being chased out of multiple provinces, you cut your losses. You pack it in, go back to a normal life, and try to rebuild your personal ledger. Why don't they just stop?
To answer that, we have to peel back the layers of their specific ideological architecture. They operate on a belief system engineered to prevent hope from curdling into despair.
How does that work?
There are a few core pillars to this. First, they hold an absolute belief that a greatest creator will not abandon them. They also trust implicitly in what they call the justice of the Tao.
The justice of the Tao essentially means trusting in an underlying universal balance, right?
Yes.
It is the belief that the universe bends toward harmony and that whatever suffering you are experiencing is just a necessary temporary phase in the cosmic order.
Exactly. And along with that, they claim a profound understanding of the secrets of the universe, time, space, and life itself.
Wow.
And when you truly believe you hold the secrets to the universe, it provides a very unique psychological shield against earthly problems.
That shield is most visible in how they process trauma in the text. When the government drives them out and destroys their property, they do not view it as malicious persecution. They reframe the narrative entirely.
Yeah, the reframing is key.
They categorize these devastating evictions merely as a temporary lack of understanding from the outside world.
That reframing is a brilliant defense mechanism, psychologically speaking. They maintain the belief that as long as they do not commit any unlawful acts, society will naturally evolve to understand them and eventually welcome their model of life.
By framing fierce systemic opposition as just a temporary misunderstanding rather than a crushing defeat, you strip the trauma of its power.
It neutralizes it.
Exactly. They are playing an infinite game. A single eviction, or even 5 evictions, is just a finite setback.
Right.
If you believe the universe is fundamentally just and you possess the secrets of time and space, then losing a physical building in Yunnan doesn't bankrupt your spiritual ledger. It is just a blip on an eternal timeline.
It creates an impenetrable feedback loop. If things go well, the ideology is validated. If things go terribly wrong, well, it just means the rest of the world hasn't caught up yet, which also validates the ideology.
So they win either way in their minds.
Yeah, the foundation of faith and hope acts as the invisible infrastructure, keeping the movement from collapsing under the weight of repeated, crushing failures.
So we have journeyed from the macro statistics of billions in pain, down to the micro-survival of kids in earthquakes and miners in collapsed tunnels, and then to the chronic, chosen endurance of this specific commune.
Quite the journey.
But the argument doesn't stop at just being an isolated case study of human resilience. There is a massive, incredibly bold leap made here at the end of the essay.
Yes, there is.
The philosophy is scaled up into a definitive global prescription.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the ideology loops right back around to the massive statistics of suffering we discussed at the very beginning.
The 800,000 suicides.
Right, and the billions carrying a deficit of despair. The argument draws a direct line from the practical endurance of their small community to the salvation of the entire human race.
And this is where I really have to challenge the logic, because it is a monumental leap. The conclusion presented is that if all of humanity simply adopts this specific Zhou-Feng-style communist form of production and life, those 800,000 annual suicides would just stop.
That's the claim.
The claim is that the suffering of hundreds of millions of people would not only be alleviated, but might disappear entirely. I mean, how do we get from 33 miners eating fish to a mandate that everyone on Earth needs to move into a commune?
The mechanism connecting those two extremes lies in the belief about modern society. The text argues that modern society, with its isolation, its intense focus on individual wealth accumulation, its constant competition, that is the actual root cause of the global despair deficit.
Okay, so society is the disease.
Yes. And the ideology argues that their specific communal model strips away the anxieties of individual survival. If the community guarantees your shelter, your food, and your purpose, the isolation that drives a person to suicide theoretically evaporates.
So they are essentially saying, you agree hope keeps trapped miners alive, right? Well, our specific communal way of life is the ultimate institutionalized form of that hope. Therefore, adopting our lifestyle is the only way to keep humanity alive.
That is the exact rhetorical flow.
Yeah,
It culminates in a dual directive for the human race.
which is.
The call to action demands that everyone embrace one central faith, that this specific movement, Lifechanyuan, is the entity that can save humanity from the sea of suffering. And alongside that faith, one hope, that as long as this movement exists, the beautiful life humanity dreams of will undoubtedly become a reality.
So what does this all mean? We've reverse engineered the blueprint of a very intense ideology today. We watched how it moves from the universal desire to avoid pain, identifies faith and hope as mechanical tools of survival, uses extreme, undeniable examples to validate those tools, and then inextricably links those universal tools to a highly specific, mandated lifestyle.
And it's important to remember, even when you separate the universal mechanics of belief from the specific communal mandates of the text, it still serves as a powerful testament to how resilience functions.
Oh, completely.
It proves that the human mind can withstand almost anything if the internal ledger is balanced by purpose.
Which connects directly back to you listening to this right now. You are probably not trapped 700 meters underground rationing canned fish.
Hopefully not.
Right. And it is highly unlikely you're trying to build a utopian commune only to be evicted 5 times. But everyone faces their own versions of collapsed mines or forced evictions.
Absolutely. We all experience those moments where the emotional or financial resources are completely exhausted.
Where the ledger is entirely in the red.
Yeah. And every piece of cold, hard logic says it is time to pack it in and quit.
And what this analysis reveals is that having a concrete why, whether that is a belief in a broader justice, a philosophical understanding of the universe, or even just a simple promise from a parent that why is what makes the impossible how bearable.
The how might be surviving on almost 0 calories or losing 20 million yuan.
But the why acts as the fuel when the adrenaline runs out.
It alters your reality. It is the literal difference between panic and endurance.
And that brings me to a final thought to leave you with, something to mull over long after this deep dive ends. Think back to that Los Angeles earthquake. The young boy's absolute faith that his father was coming literally infected the other 13 children, keeping them all alive in the darkness.
Such a powerful image.
We always talk about fear spreading. We talk about panic rippling through a crowd. But if hope is just as infectious as despair, whose hope are you currently catching? And perhaps more importantly, when you look at the people around you in the dark, who is catching yours?